From the land to Grant University in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, this is the Closing Market Report. It is the 18th day of September 2025. I'm Extension's Todd Gleason. Coming up, we'll talk about the commodity markets with Matt Bennett from agmarket.net. We'll hear about a commission looking at biotechnology. This was formed by the United States government in 2022, and they visited last week the campus here in Urbana-Champaign. Paul Arcangeli is the commissioner there. We'll discuss their mandate and how the university is playing into that and some things that I think you'll find of interest as well. And then as we close out our time together, we'll take a look at the weather forecast with Mike Tannura. He's at T-Storm Weather. That's tstorm.net online, all on this Thursday edition of the Closing Market Report from Illinois Public Media. It is public radio for the farming world, online on demand at willag.org.
Todd Gleason's services are made available to WILL by University of Illinois Extension.
December corn for the day settled at $4.23 3/4, 3 lower. The March down 3 as well at $4.41 a bushel, and the May corn at $4.51 down 2 3/4 cents. November beans 10.37 down 6 1/4. January 10.56 down 6.5 cents, and the March soybeans at 10.71 down 6.5. Bean meal 90 cents lower. Bean oil 67 cents lower. Wheat futures soft red into December down 4 at 5.24 1/4. The hard red December down 6 1/4 at $5.10. Live cattle up $1.47.5, and lean hogs a nickel higher for the day. Matt Bennett from agmarket.net now joins us to take a look at the marketplace. He's in the Combine Cab again this week, like last time. Matt, thanks for being with us. When we spoke with you, you were just getting started in soybeans. How have things changed over the week?
Yeah, so when we talked last week, we were on our earliest planted beans that were planted on our darkest ground, our best dirt, if you will. And so we actually cut beans Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We ran out of dry beans, and then we tried a little bit of corn. And it was still a little wet for what we wanted to do, so we got back into beans actually just today. So had a couple of days where we didn't do a whole lot because, quite frankly, we didn't have anything ready. We were a little surprised, how the corn is hanging on to the moisture. Now, our earliest planted corn on our blackest ground, once again, we're very happy with it. It's definitely off of last year, but it's good corn. And so I'm cutting beans today on lighter dirt, and I would say it's anywhere from 10 to 15 bushel off of what we were talking last week. But I'd say still a pretty respectable yield considering the kind of weather we had there in August.
Then what would the normal difference between those two, the dark dirt and the lighter dirt, be to begin with? Would it be 10 bushels normally?
Oh, I would say less than that, So especially with the genetics over these last few years, as long as you get ample rainfall, it seems like these farms, I'd say one of them's an A and one of them's a B plus farm. And so the B plus farm with these genetics, especially considering the one that I'm on today, has got a little bit of a roll to it. Sometimes it actually does as good or better. And so this happened to be a year, though, where, you needed to hold on to that moisture as long as you possibly could. And certainly the black ground did that. Now, the lighter dirt still is awfully good in a lot of places, but anywhere you get into a little bit higher ground, there's no doubt that you see, a little bit of a yield drag. So, I'm not complaining. I think where I'm really concerned, Todd, is whenever we get into our May planted beans on light ground, I'm a little concerned about what the yield will look like there. But, we won't find that out probably for at least another week.
You were surprised that the corn's hanging on to the moisture as long as it has. Does that also mean that grain fill went better than you thought it might have?
I think that some of the yields that we've seen have been a little better than what we thought it was going to be, by all means. I think ultimately it's very interesting as I talk to growers, for instance, in the state of Iowa, they're dealing with massive disease issues. So I talked to growers northwest of Des Moines yesterday, and, some of these guys were telling me that where they sprayed fungicide twice, it's about 80 bushel better than where they didn't spray anything. And where they sprayed it once, it's about 40 bushel better than where they didn't spray anything. So clearly, they had a very dynamic situation with, overabundance of rainfall here in the month of August. Whereas, in central Illinois, in the areas where we didn't get much rain in August, one shot of fungicide is all that it took. And so we're not dealing with the disease pressure here. And so our average yields, might actually be fairly comparable, to some of these guys in Iowa that's got such different situations whenever it comes to, disease pressure, how many times they sprayed fungicide, et cetera. So it's going to be very interesting. You're going to hear yields and see yields that will be so far from each other just across the road, depending on management. And by all means, I'm not attacking anybody in those situations that didn't spray twice, because with $4 corn, it's a pretty tough ask to get a grower to spend maybe $60-$80 an acre on a 2-pass program for fungicide. So it's just it's going to take a long time to figure this out, Todd. But I think the overarching thing for me, what's the later yield's going to be? And I think in those areas that the maps show that it's the driest it's been in 130 years, we'd be remiss as to think that we're not going to lose a fair amount of yield the farther into harvest we get.
Yesterday, the Federal Reserve dropped the interest rate by 0.25%. Did that have much of an impact in the market? And if not, what have you been watching?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly didn't give us a boost by any means. I mean, a lot of times people feel like, maybe if you get a little bit of a drop in interest rates, it could be inflationary towards commodities. That certainly isn't something that we've seen or felt. I do think a lot of people were mildly hopeful that you would get a half-point cut, but the rhetoric certainly sounds like they're planning on another cut before the end of the year. So I don't know. The market didn't necessarily handle it the way we'd want to see it. But I think right now the market's just kind of in a standstill. Too many different ideas as to what this crop's going to end up being. And, you see one person post a 280 yield in Iowa, and I've heard a lot of them. And then you hear other people post, a 160 yield in Iowa, and I've heard a lot of those too. So, it's just going to be very interesting to see where this thing ends up falling.
What are you going to watch the rest of this week?
I just want to know how that phone call is going to go tomorrow. Supposedly Trump's going to talk to Xi. You've got to assume, that there's already some sort of framework into place that they've got some sort of agreements. We've heard that this would be good for Boeing. We've heard this would be good for soybeans. But whether or not we're going to see that come to pass, I don't know.
All right. Hey, thanks much. We'll talk with you again next week.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That's Matt Bennett. He is with agmarket.net. The National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology, established in 2022, aims to address the broader implications of biotechnology, including health, food, and agriculture, particularly bioprocessing. As you'll hear, the Commission emphasizes the importance of biotechnology in manufacturing, highlighting the potential for job creation and economic growth across the country. Commissioner Paul Arcangeli was on campus last week to explore the kinds of research that's been happening here and how it has been leveraged to create a bioprocessing corridor stretching across Champaign, Piatt, and Macon counties. Farm broadcaster Stu Ellis and I sat down with the commissioner for just a few minutes. Our conversation began with me asking him to tell me about the commission's mandate.
So the commission was established in the fiscal year 22 National Defense Authorization Act, and it was put in by Congress to look at national security, emerging biotechnology. And the first thing we realized when the commission was established was that national security, emerging biotechnology is much broader than just national security. It encompasses health security, it encompasses food security, agriculture, manufacturing. So it's much broader. And it lives and dies underneath the broader economy of biotechnology. So if we can't do things and be innovative in biotech, we can't do national security biotechnology either.
There are a list, I think, of 49 or 47. You can correct me as to which this is, the recommendations that have been made. Can you give me some examples of things that you hope might come to be and things that have already gone through Congress and legislation?
So there are 49 recommendations made by the Commission. 25 of those recommendations have already been introduced by members in the House and Senate in bills. So they haven't been enacted into law yet, but they are in the process. The Probably the thing that sticks in front of me the most is that there needs to be some kind of overarching guidance from the government, within the government. If you're working in biotech, you may touch multiple agencies of the United States government that aren't communicating. So there's a whole lot of regulation, especially in agriculture, especially in healthcare, where you may touch more than one agency at once with your innovative solution, and there's not anybody in government who can take you through that process. And so you have to navigate it on your own. So that's the thing that, in my mind, impedes progress the most.
So some of this then is about making sure that there is a path forward, that those who are interested in this can find a way to get products into the system more easily. Part of it, though, is about national security, and that can be defined in many ways.
Well, sure. And, as I said, food security is national security. But biotechnology, it's not clear to most people what that means. When I say biotech, people think, oh, healthcare. It's much broader than that. Biotechnology is going to touch our lives in so many ways. We're going to manufacture with biotechnology things that right now we get from petrochemicals or we get from some other method. And we're going to be able to do it faster. We're going to be able to do it cheaper. And we're going to be able to produce chemicals and drop-in replacements, but we're also going to be able to produce things that may have new capabilities and properties, better, stronger, faster, lighter, things that would have great utility to the warfighter and have a national security use. And in addition, as I just said, food security is national security. So agriculture is absolutely important in biotechnology, and advances in biotechnology and agriculture, where it's better for the farmer, is going to be better for national security. And it'll have the follow-on effect of providing other capabilities to national security as well.
You're here on the University of Illinois campus visiting IFAB, the IBRL. It is part of a corridor that stretches from Champaign to Decatur in hopes of creating a bioprocessing mecca of sorts across those areas to create new products from crops. How does that play into your security and other issues related to the commission?
So you asked the question about, we're here in the middle of America, and biotech, most people think biotech lives on the coasts. And the whole point is that it's where the biomass is. And here we are in Illinois, and I'm looking at all these amazing biotech startups and biotech companies. All of that is going to be part of the ecosystem of biotech in the United States. That is what is driving innovation. That is what is going to produce these new solutions for the warfighter. So all of it is threaded together. And what a lot of people don't understand is that biotechnology manufacturing is going to happen all over the country. It's not just going to happen on the edges. It's going to happen everywhere. And it's going to happen in rural communities. And it's going to bring jobs that aren't just PhDs. It's going to be the entire stack of folks that work in manufacturing. So people who are going to have to run these facilities. We're going to need technical degrees. We're going to need folks to manage them and feed these plants to produce these outcomes.
You visited Primient ADM today, and now at the IBRL. What either surprised you and or excited you about what you saw?
So one of the things that I have learned over the last few years is that when you are working in biotech, you may come up with an innovative solution. You may invent something that works in a test tube, but it doesn't work at 75,000 liters. So it doesn't scale efficiently. That is a hard process. It's also an expensive process. So getting investment, if you're a small startup company, in your innovative biotech solution is very difficult if there's no way for you to scale. So what I saw today at IFAB was exactly what we need. That middle step of scaling from a test tube to a large quantity. And then once you're there and you've demonstrated that your technology works along that scale and up to large scale, you can convert to a commercial process and manufacture at scale and then sell that. Then that's where investment can help at the end, you can say, look, this works, and it works at large scale.
And that's what you saw at ADM and Primient.
That's exactly what I saw. I saw the entire chain of test tube all the way to up to 1 million gallons at ADM, and it was fascinating and exciting to see. And that was one of the things that had me worried over the last couple of years is that that's happening in other countries, and we need more of that here.
Now, we have farmers who are looking at low prices for corn and a diminishing market for soybeans. How quick is this going to replace what we are growing now? Is this 5 years, 10 years, a lot of years?
Biotech is moving faster than that. And it really is a question of how fast are we going to move to take this up. It's moving so fast. 18 months in biotech is a generation of technology. We're turning those generations very, very fast.
What are you going to tell your colleagues when you get back to Washington?
I'm going to tell them all about what I saw here in Illinois. I'm very excited by not just the small things that we've seen at the university where startups are at work, but going out and seeing the large scale production is really exciting to us. And I think this is a demonstration of the things that the commission has been after, which is that this is new manufacturing all across the country and great opportunity if we can just capture it.
One last question. You used a term war, and I don't quite remember exactly what it was. Can you define that term for me?
I say warfighter. So this is all my years in defense speaking, right? So I talk in code. When I say warfighter, I'm speaking about the service member, but also the mission of the service member. I didn't say soldier. I didn't say sailor. I didn't say airman. I didn't say marine. I didn't say guardian. I said warfighter. All those services will benefit from biotechnology because we're going to produce, and we are producing, things that are far beyond what you might imagine, which is, coatings for aircraft, coatings for engines, new textiles that are stronger that you can make body armor out of, self-healing runways. All these technologies are going to be valuable to the warfighter across the entire spectrum of national security.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Paul Arcangeli is with the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology. He visited the University of Illinois last week to tour facilities dedicated to the development of the bioprocessing industry for agricultural crops. Let's check in now with Mike Tannura. He's the CEO and president at T-Storm Weather, a meteorologist and an agricultural economist. I want to start, Mike, by digging into some numbers I know you have been looking at. August was fairly dry. Can you talk about it and then maybe put the soybean crop into perspective?
If you look at August rainfall across the 7-state Corn Belt, it was the sixth driest going back 131 years. So that gives an indication that soybeans needed some rain last month. Over the last 30 days, ending on September 17th, 60% of expected U.S. soybean production only had less than half of its normal rainfall. And that's a pretty high dryness coverage for the crop. It's interesting because our data set goes back 14 years, and there's only 2 other years that had a similar spike in dryness leading into the middle of September. And that was actually the last 2 years, 2023 and 2024. And so now we're going to add 2025 to the list. So kind of unusual that we basically had a very similar weather pattern over a very similar period of time for 3 years in a row. And Todd, you don't need to be a huge observer of weather to know that that's not usually what happens. Usually weather is varying from year to year and from time to time, but this is the third time that we've seen this. And so if you think about soybean yields, this is where it gets a little bit challenging because we know that last year the USDA was projecting a soybean crop at around 53.5 bushels per acre, pretty similar to what's being projected right now for this year's crop, but that eventually fell all the way down to 50.7. And there's a number of reasons why that happened, though we don't really know what they all are, and some people want to attribute that late season dryness to it. So if you just look at it in that window, you might say, well, hey, this might happen again. And it might. But if you go back 2 years, which again had a similar scenario to this one, the yield actually started out a lot lower in the September USDA projection. They were at 50.1 bushels per acre in September of 2023, and it ended at 50.5. So it basically ended at about the same number, but the projection was much lower at this time of the year. So, similar weather in all three of these years, kind of different USDA projections on how they came to their final number. So, we don't want to get too caught up in that, but we just do want to point out that it's been very dry. This is a third year in a row of this, and it'll be a good data point because we'll be able to tell, what really is going on. Is this late September dryness really affecting yields? Because we basically haven't had any observations like this over the last 10 to 20 years, and now we're going to have three in a row.
Is the finish of September, the beginning of October, going to be wetter?
Well, it is turning wetter. We had some decent rains over the last 24 hours in parts of the plains and even into Iowa. And that whole system is chugging eastward at a very slow pace, but that will turn all the Corn Belt a little bit wetter as we get into next week. There's another system behind it, and that will, in some fashion, merge with the first system and kind of create a showery period across a big chunk of the Corn Belt. So it will be turning wetter over the next 7 days. We're thinking a half of an inch to 1.5 inches with the best totals from Illinois and points down to the west. But, we'll see how all that pans out and whether or not that means anything. If you look back at 2023 and 24, the peak of dryness did end at about this point in time also as rains arrived. And they kind of dropped it kind of ended that dryness story. And it's going to end again, it looks like, this year too.
What's the story from the beginning of the growing season in South America this year?
Well, Mato Grosso is getting some decent thunderstorms this week, and that's going to continue into the end of the month. That's important because if they get some nice rains in September, they can start planting soybeans early. But when we talk about early soybean planting in Mato Grosso, we're not talking about a huge amount of soybeans. Maybe they'll plant anywhere from 1 to 5% of that crop before October starts. But it is, a decent start for them. The rest of central and northern Brazil will get some thunderstorms next week, but behind that, there's not much. So we don't think we're going to see this huge, wide open soybean planting setup in Brazil just because the good rains are pretty much limited to that state. In the southern part and also extending into Argentina, they're planting some soybeans, but really more of corn at this time of the year. And they've been pretty wet and they're going to turn wetter. Pretty big system is moving through today and it'll continue to pass all the way through Monday. And then there's another system about a week after that. So between all that, a pretty wet open to the growing seasons in Argentina, southern Brazil, and even Paraguay too.
Hey, thank you much. I appreciate it.
Sure thing, Todd.
That's Mike Tannura. He's with T-Storm Weather at tstorm.net online. You've been listening to the Closing Market Report from Illinois Public Media. I'm Todd Gleason.